the first fake ID I ever had, Andrew. Very quick story. This is going somewhere. And there's a reason I started with this line of questioning.
Oh, I understand.
So one of my really good friends, our senior year of high school, got a job working at Staples in the printing center.
Okay.
And he had access to, at the time, some like really nice copy machines and printing machines. So he's like, I'm going to make some IDs. Do you want me to make you one? And I was like, sure. So I didn't know what he was doing. I assumed a driver's license, but he came back a few days later. He's like, here you go. Here's your college ID. And it just said like Drexel University on it. And I told him like which name to use. I even remember the name. It was Jim Pashtalian, because my middle name is James. So they call me Jim, and Pashtalian, I don't know where that came from, but it sounds Armenian. I don't think it's an actual Armenian name. Dude, there's something about that schwa sound that I really enjoy.
Schwa.
So I had this college ID with he took like my senior year yearbook photo and like put it in there, and like it looked pretty decent. He laminated it and everything. I only used it once, and it actually worked. I used it when we went to go see Private Parts. Because
sure.
I think it was R, right? It wasn't NC-17.
No, it was R. Yeah.
And I must have been 16 at the time. Did you ever have a fake ID?
No.
What?
I'm being serious. I did not start drinking
Till we started the show.
Till I started working with you.
It's all starting to make sense.
Hey everybody, welcome to our third episode here.
Third, we made it.
We made it.
We've been very busy beavers these past few weeks.
That's a good way
We've been doing a lot of stuff, actually. It's been good.
A lot of stuff. I mean, it does help that have a little bit of time off. I can devote some of this time to just having some creative time.
Yeah, creative time.
Yeah, but this is our third episode. We today are going to talk about Big. Very popular 1988 movie.
88 came out. I think he did Dragnet right before this, right?
87. Yeah.
I saw this in the theater. It's one of those. I remember.
I remember seeing it too. And in fact, I remember seeing it. We got to the theater late.
Oh.
And I don't remember.
Very stressful for a young Andrew.
Well, I was a little verklempt, but I don't remember it being. We were there for the credits, so I don't think I saw the.
Coming attractions.
I did not see the coming attractions. I do remember that. But
nowadays, it's like 40 minutes of coming attractions, so you can be late.
tons of time.
It's like 35 minutes in the theater.
Haven't been to the theater in a long time, but I do remember that in pre-times. I don't think Big was a movie that I really wanted to see. I don't think that was something that it was like, oh yeah, I really want to see Big. In fact, right now, thinking about it, Big is one of those movies where a lot of the jokes went over my head at that time. Now that I watch it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty clever. But back then, not really something that I knew.
No, totally. And I was thinking about this and rewatching it last night. Tom Hanks was such a big part of my early life, which is weird. I don't give the guy enough credit. Like, I think he's a great actor. I seems like a really nice dude. But he was really a big part of my early childhood. Like, when I moved to the East Coast, one of the first shows I started watching in syndication, like during the day, was Bosom Buddies. So that was my first exposure to him. And I was like, this is hilarious. And then start seeing his movies, and I actually really liked a lot of his movies as a kid. And for some reason, I don't know, I don't go back and revisit the Tom Hanks movies as much. But I was just thinking about it last night. I was like, I used to love all of this guy's movies. But yeah, like. I remember really liking it when I saw it in the theater. It was one of those movies that I enjoyed. And I even remember seeing that trailer when he's like eating like the little mini corn. Like, I thought that was hilarious. But there are a lot of jokes that obviously are adult themed. And actually, I mean, could this movie even be made today with some of the risque situations that they put this teenage boy into, even though he's in a grown man's body, but he's like hooking up with this older woman, all kinds of weird stuff. But we don't really know what happens. But
the idea of, him talking about his bunk bed, and being like, and he's like, well, do you want to, like, I'm paraphrasing, do you want to sleep over? And she's like, well, I mean, if you want me to sleep over. He's like, all right, but I get to be on top because he's got a bunk bed, and that's
Right.
where his mind goes.
Yeah,
And that's really funny to me. And as an adult, I find that the movie is much funnier because I understand these jokes. So
Yeah, and the idea of being a kid in a grown man's body and having like a disposable income where you could turn your apartment into like the greatest place ever with arcade games and bunk beds and all sorts of toys and stuff.
sure, the arcade, the vending machine that's like, oh, it doesn't take quarters. You just hit the button and it just pops. I'm like,
It's like
oh my god,
the ultimate wish fulfillment right there.
totally.
Escapism, yeah.
I think the reason why I didn't go back to that movie though was because of like the end, where it's just like it was kind of like it's not sad, but it's like the reality that catches up with you, and it's a reality of like you things don't always turn out the way that you thought they would, or maybe don't grow up so fast, or things like that.
Sure.
It's just kind of like when I was younger, I'd rather watch Masters of the Universe, or I'd rather watch. Oh, what's that other movie that we were like Dragnet? Because that's just kind of zany and goofy and silly, and I think that's what I wanted. I didn't want like the meaningful ending.
That makes sense. Yeah.
You know? But it's more for adults, I think.
Why did we choose this movie? I mean, we obviously both like it, but it's not like one of our top 10s or favorites. But I don't know what attracted us to this film for our third episode, especially.
I think we were trying to. Obviously, Back to the Future and Big Trouble, 1980s movies, and I think maybe we were just trying to do 1980s relevant, to like what was popular at the time. So the 1980s was really big at that point. Princess Bride is also 1980s, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, you're right. We were very 80s centric in the beginning there.
It was 80s centric, and I think that's something that we were just trying to, see as far as we could go. And then when we started doing. What was after that? It was My Cousin Vinny. So we were breaching the 90s, and then much later on, not much later, but when we did Home Alone, 1990, and then Swingers, that was pushing the boundaries there because we're 96,
97.
Ooh, watch out there,
Getting old.
careful. But Big was an interesting film, and I did rewatch the episode, and just thinking about. This was that turning point, I think, of what are we doing?
Who are we?
Who are we? What are we talking about? And I would credit you as being, because you had brought up William Redkin in Big Trouble, and in talking about William Redkin, and I was like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
William Redkin's fine. Moving on. But having characters, and for what it's worth, like you would not always explain to me what you were. I didn't explain
where you were
joke,
going
right?
with certain things. Well, I mean, but maybe that's a good thing, because you didn't explain where you were going, so it's kind of a surprise to me.
Usually because I didn't know. I was just as surprised as you were
Well,
with the things coming out of my mouth.
maybe I believe that. But as a plot device, for the show. Like in how it started to build the world itself, and having characters like William Redkin. There was an entire episode that we never released about William Redkin and his start and the kind of films that he made. And it was just us goofing off of just like, oh yeah, so what would he do? The whole idea about him in Vietnam was still there. How we were both kind of afraid of him.
He was friends with George Lucas.
Yeah, friends.
He
with
didn't
George
really
Lucas.
go to USC. He just hung out
He would show films on the sidewalk
during the daytime,
right?
And people would just walk
all over it. It's like,
It's a decent bit.
Yeah, and so I feel like if anything to talk about Big, the highlights of Big would be the sequel to Big. I think that had some interesting ideas, because like, where do you go from there? Talking about a kid who has this remarkable life experience, and then just nothing else happens. I feel like in today's world, they would definitely exploit that. But then the other thing that was really fun to talk about was just the building of the William Redkin character. Like, we devoted a number of minutes to that plot.
Yeah, like the last 3 minutes, basically. We're
Right.
talking about William Redkin and Red Screen and his origins, and yeah.
The actual podcast itself, or episode. Sorry, was, I think, kind of bringing that over from Big Trouble in Little China, where we were just kind of trying to shoot something and we didn't really know what we had, and it's kind of creating it in the edit, kind of challenging. I noticed in looking back at it that we weren't continuing with the let's travel someplace else. We didn't quite have that.
Oh yeah, we didn't preview our next episode because I don't think we knew what we were going to do yet.
We didn't know what we were going to do. Either that or I didn't include that, but I don't think we had it. I think I would have included that in there.
I don't remember.
After Big, at least with Princess Bride and with the Halloween special, I think we plotted things out a little bit more about what we wanted to talk about, where we wanted to go, what we wanted to have before we would stop.
Yeah.
And I think Big was the last episode that we had before just whatever you say, we'll just try to put it in there.
I remember back then, 2017, 2018, really thinking that Princess Bride was a turning point. And this came right before that. So that makes total sense to me. It really felt like we were starting to find our stride around episode 4. And then things really changed after the Halloween episode, because then we get to actually see William Redkin. He's introduced. He only shows up at the very end for 30 seconds, but that was really when we just kind of took off. But that's a whole other podcast. It's a whole other episode. But I think Back to the Future is winning as far as the rewatchability for whatever reason. But like you said, we did spend a lot of time, or the last few minutes, focusing on Redkin, which was great. There's a lot of good stuff that came out of that.
We had a couple of successful. I feel like Big is actually a little bit more successful than Big Trouble in Little China because of two things. One was the ability of talking about where a sequel could go, and just kind of a zany, like, it didn't, even though we had kind of talked about it before, it felt as if it was spontaneous. And the second thing that was good about it was the talking about William Redkin, because, again, to your point, we devote a lot of time in talking about William Redkin and just building that backstory for him. But Big, a couple of things that were the last of. It was the last of the Peanuts type voice. It was it's not the last, but it was the second to last time that we were picking characters to play.
We didn't use a hat or anything this time.
We didn't use a hat.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Or a lantern.
No, I mean that
should
really
use the coffee maker in the background.
This is, oh look, the Hills Brothers. Can we get the Hills Brothers? So it was one of the last times that we had done that, just because it seemed, was it too much work? I mean, what would have been the reason that we stopped having?
I think we just got bored with it. We're like, meh, doesn't really add anything.
Yeah, because also to that point too, like we had already kind of thought out what we wanted to do anyway, so it's like, why go through the charade, sure, right, of doing all of that. So I think we just cut that. I know we did that in Princess Bride, but I feel like the only reason we did it there was because of that envelope kind of thing.
Oh right,
we
used
going on.
The envelope, yeah,
right. We did a couple of things like that also with the Halloween episode, where we were talking about horror and horror. So, but
again, that Jersey connection.
Again,
have you ever been to New Jersey?
Yes, actually.
Other than the airport, it's a major hub. It's a great airport, actually. It's one of my favorites.
Well, wait, I'm trying to think actually if I have been to New Jersey.
We're gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to take you sometime.
All right.
I took Sarah twice, and she's like, Jersey gets a bad rap. It's kind of beautiful. It's like, it's a very nice place. It's called the Garden State for a reason.
It is the Garden State.
Yeah, it's very, very nice.
To be honest, my version of New Jersey is rooted in the Sopranos opening. You just, wow, that looks nice. Industrial.
Yeah. Well, that's only the parts they're showing is like what is he? He's on the Parkway. He gets on the Turnpike.
Right?
So yeah, all that stuff outside of the city, like and when you cross the bridge, is pretty industrial. But everything else it's the boonies. I mean, we're part of Appalachia. Like literally, when you go down to South Jersey, it's like being in Georgia. It's the same feel. It's like, yeah.
Well, for
the boondocks.
Tony's house, it looks very nice. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean,
West
that's
Caldwell.
a real place. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it looks
it's a tourist trap now. Can you imagine living in that neighborhood? There are people just like taking photos There's photos of people like picking up a newspaper in their driveway. I'm like, God.
Still to this
That
day.
was me, but still, I was ashamed of my own behavior.
Didn't that show end like 15 years ago at this point?
Yeah.
That's nice. I would watch Sopranos. I would watch Curb.
Entourage was a big
I
on
would
my-
watch Entourage. Which is funny you bring up Entourage because I feel like that was at least my inspiration for Redkin was, and now I don't remember his name. Who was the director in Entourage? The one was it Billy? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, this is Redkin.
Great character.
Right. It's just kind of like a hothead.
Got into making porn for a while, and they like literally pull him off a porn set, and then he's directing like these it was a good show. I wonder if I could watch it without cringing now, because there was a lot of cringe stuff in there, I'm sure. But I never saw the movie.
Oh no, But that, you're bringing that up as a. We were talking a little bit before this about
Billy Walsh. Sorry,
Billy
that was
Walsh,
his name. Yeah,
yeah.
good call.
But that's the idea too. Of,
They do look similar too, actually. Now that you mention it,
Maybe that's why I thought that.
maybe.
And just like, oh, this is definitely a Billy Walsh.
Oh, that
type
makes total
character.
sense, actually.
Just like, what do you mean? That's the thing about that came out at a very specific time, and it was very popular at a very specific time. And you try to make a movie about that, like a few years later. Same thing with that Sopranos movie. Like, I don't know how many people went to see it. Did you see it? Was it good?
I watched it.
Did you enjoy it?
No.
You watch a movie like the Entourage movie. You watch things like Saints of New York.
It's so funny. My wife can't say Newark. She says Newark. I was like, it's Newark. She's like, no, it's Newark. I was like, okay. All right.
Newark. Saints of Newark. All right. So watching movies like Entourage or the Saints of Newark or any of the other, they used to be big hits a long time ago. And it's like, oh, let's remake it or let's add another story or something like that. It's like, sometimes the reasons they don't work is because it existed in that point in time a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
And Entourage was, the episodes were 30 minutes. They were short.
Yeah. They were short. Maybe they went 45 minutes if it was a special episode.
Right.
But like, who are you really trying to, and who is this speaking to? And the audience has moved on. I mean, do you remember when E.T. was re-released in theaters back in probably 2001, 2002?
No.
And Spielberg had like gone through and like digitally erased the shotguns and they replaced it with, walkie-talkies. And he was just kind of like, oh, well, I just want to make it a little bit more family friendly. It was one of the biggest grossing movies of all time. If I remember correctly, something like $399 million back in 1982. Maybe, re-released and things like that. But like, that was a time and a place. It struck a chord. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to want to see it 20 years later, 30 years later. That's not necessarily what's going to happen.
You remind me of something really funny and somewhat related, but unrelated at the same time. So,
That's a combo.
yeah. I was picking up some folding chairs from my parents' house a couple of weeks ago, and they keep them like in the basement under the house, which is usually where basements are.
This is one of those subterranean.
Yes,
like
under the ground
basements?
basements, not to be confused with an above ground basement or attic, as some
Attic.
people call them.
I prefer basement.
Yeah, but they have them covered, the chairs covered with these ET sheets that I had when I was a little kid.
Try to say that 10 times fast.
ET sheets, blankets that I was terrified of when I was a kid. I'd never seen the movie. For some reason, my mom bought me ET sheets, even though I'd never seen the movie.
Everyone
And
had.
I'd have to sleep with this freaking alien surrounding me, and I was like terrified. I hated those sheets. Now I go to pick up these chairs 30 years later. I'm like, Jesus, stupid ET sheets,
Well, that makes
haunting me to
sense.
this day.
That makes sense.
Didn't like that film. Overrated.
I don't understand the fascination with the film. The musical score is great.
I heard it's just a really long commercial for Reese's Pieces. Reese's Pieces.
It's a oversimplification, I think, of the film, but I see where your mind is in coming to that conclusion. I don't know. I didn't like it when E.T. dies. I don't know. I don't.
But
like
he
those
comes
kinds
back
of
to
things.
life, like Jesus. It's
And
a Jesus
that's fine.
film.
Okay.
Oh, I figured it out, finally. You heard it here first, folks. E.T. is an allegory for Jesus Christ. You're welcome.
Yeah. I did like when they were bike riding. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, but
I did see that part.
Did you see that part?
Did you see
or were you
that
hiding under your sheets?
Under my scary sheets? Like, I can't even hide under my sheets. I'm scared of my sheets.
I don't want to watch the movie. I must hide under my sheets.
Oh my God, there are aliens all over my sheets. Why would you buy these for me? I don't even see
Thanks,
the film.
Mom.
I know, I never even see the film. Now I'm scared of my sheets. I'm scared to go to bed.
Scared sheetless.
And I think we just figured out where all of my underlying issues come from.
E.T.
These E.T. sheets.
E.T. sheets.
Thanks, Mom. Why are you still using them to cover up chairs?
Well, probably to throw some anxiety.
Parents always looking ways to cut corners, save some money. Let's just use these sheets from 40 years ago.
They're like, Ara, what terrifies you? Like, well, E.T.
Aliens.
For one. I have just a thing.
How'd
Can you go
like
downstairs?
Them all over your sheets.
Please go downstairs. Get those chairs. They're underneath. Well, you'll see.
Yeah.
You'll see what they are. Yeah. Just go ahead and get those sheets.
It's all making sense now.
Well, I think it's all part of a plan.
Sure. And if I ever go to a therapist, this is the first thing that's going to come up.
E.T. sheets.
Yeah.
You can go sit down. Hey, Dr. Melfi.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah. What seems to be your problem?
I hate E.T.
These friggin' E.T. sheets.
I hate aliens.
Aliens. Everywhere I look. Aliens. These E.T. sheets.
It's all making sense now.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. I'm glad we talked about that.
Sure. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you for indulging. But I think that'll probably about do it. I
Sure.
don't even know if we
What
talked
were
about
we talking
Big.
about?
Did we talk about Big at all in this episode? Well, I guess just to summarize, Big would be the beginning of the turning point of trying to figure out exactly what the show was. I do remember vaguely, but I do remember that after E.T., I do remember.
You're welcome.
I do E.T. I do remember that after Big, I think we had spent a little bit more time in trying to construct at least some sort of general plot. For what we had done for Big Trouble in Little China, we just, I think we tried to just expand on that. It's like, let's not do any research at all. Let's just keep it no research.
No.
Let's just be spontaneous.
Overrated.
Because if anything, I'm super spontaneous.
You are.
Like, I'm Mr. Spontaneous.
Spontaneity is your middle name.
I don't really know what you mean because we hadn't talked about that before. So we're going to have to just
I was improvising.
Oh, you were?
I was wearing my Belloc hat in this episode, speaking of which.
Oh, you were.
My blue checkered shirt and a Belloc hat.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting in front of your coffee maker. What an odd set.
I think we were both visibly sweating throughout the entire episode.
Well, it was hot.
It was hot.
It
and every time we turned the AC on, all you heard was the AC. So you even put that in that video that we didn't release, the air conditioner.
I put it in the video because it was like, how do I explain this hum?
We just be talking, you just hear chicken.
And I wanted to include that in the entire episode, and you're like,
it's fair.
It's fine. Anyway, I think we're good to wrap up.
That was fun. We'll see you next time, episode 4, Princess Bride. The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this particular episode.
Woot, woot.
For this particular episode, talking about Big and many other things. Thank you very much.
As Johnny Drama would say, victory!
Oh, he would say that, wouldn't he? All right, everybody.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.